My name is Sarah Thompson, and I'm 31 years old. My older brother Michael is 35, and for as long as I can remember, he's been the golden child of our family. Michael the Harvard graduate. Michael the successful entrepreneur. Michael the self-made millionaire who built his tech consulting firm from nothing. Except none of that was true. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to where this really started, with our grandmother, Eleanor Thompson. Grandma Eleanor was old money, the kind of wealth that whispers instead of shouts. Her father had made a fortune in railroads in the 1920s, and she'd grown up in an era where women weren't supposed to understand business, but she understood it better than any man in her circle. She married my grandfather in 1960, and when he died in 1995, she inherited everything, $47 million in assets, carefully managed and grown over 3 decades. Grandma had 2 children, our father David, and our Aunt Patricia. Dad married my mother Jennifer, a middle school teacher who came from a working-class background and never quite felt comfortable with the family money. Michael was born when Grandma was 62. I came along 4 years later. From the beginning, Michael was everything our parents wanted. Charismatic. Athletic. Smart. He made straight A's without trying, captained the lacrosse team, and got into Harvard on a combination of legacy admission and genuine merit. I was different. Quiet. Bookish. I loved mathematics and spent most of high school in advanced placement classes that bored Michael but fascinated me. I went to state college because I got a full academic scholarship and didn't see the point in Ivy League debt. Why can't you be more ambitious like your brother? Dad asked when I told them my decision. Michael went to Harvard. Started a tech consulting company at 25. Bought a house in San Francisco at 27. Married a woman named Vanessa who looked like she belonged in a magazine. I got my degree in actuarial science, moved to Denver, and started working for an insurance company analyzing risk models. Sarah's doing fine, Grandma would say when family gatherings devolved into comparisons. Not everyone needs to be flashy to be successful. But even she seemed to favor Michael. Or so I thought. The truth started revealing itself 3 weeks before Grandma's 85th birthday. She called me to her lawyer's office in Boston. Just me. Not Michael. Not my parents. Sarah, she said, settling into the leather chair across from her attorney, I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. I waited, confused. Your brother's business, she began carefully. It's not exactly what everyone thinks it is. What do you mean? She pulled out a folder. Michael started his consulting firm in 2014 with what he told everyone was seed funding from angel investors. That wasn't true. I gave him $2 million to start the company. I stared at her. He told everyone he bootstrapped it. I know what he told everyone. I let him have that story because I thought he'd eventually make good on it. Build something real. Pay me back. She sighed. He didn't. She opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, wire transfers, cancelled checks. In the last 10 years, I've given your brother $8.4 million, Grandma said quietly. The house in San Francisco? I bought it. His car? Mine. Vanessa's engagement ring? I paid for it. His company has never been profitable. Every time it nearly fails, he comes to me with projections and promises, and I bail him out. I couldn't speak. Your parents don't know, she continued. Michael told them he's successful, and they believed him because they wanted to. Because he looks successful. Why are you telling me this? Grandma's eyes, still sharp at 85, fixed on mine. Because I'm setting up a trust. A very specific trust. And I need someone I can trust to manage it after I'm gone. Over the next 2 hours, her attorney explained the structure. Grandma was creating a $3.4 million irrevocable trust with me as the administrator. The trust would make distributions to Michael, but he would never know the source. Anonymous wire transfers. Untraceable payments that would cover his mortgage, his business expenses, his lifestyle. Why? I asked. Why keep funding him? Because he's my grandson, and I love him despite his flaws, Grandma said. But I'm not a fool. If he knows the money comes from me, he'll never learn. He'll keep taking. This way, he'll think his business is succeeding. He'll think he's earned it. And if he doesn't learn? If he keeps failing? She looked at me steadily. Then you'll have the power to stop it. The trust gives you complete discretion over distributions. You can continue them, modify them, or revoke them entirely. Grandma. I'm 85 years old, Sarah. I won't live forever. When I'm gone, Michael will either have learned to stand on his own, or he'll need someone to make hard choices for him. She reached across and took my hand. You're the only person in this family I trust to make those choices wisely. The trust was established in March 2018. I became the administrator. Grandma funded it with $3.4 million from her estate. Michael never knew. The monthly distributions started immediately, $12,000 to cover his mortgage, $8,000 for his business operating expenses, quarterly payments of $25,000 for unexpected costs. The money came from shell corporations with names like Venture Capital Partners and Strategic Growth Fund. Michael thought he was getting funding from impressed investors who'd seen his potential. He thought he'd earned it. Grandma died 8 months later, in November 2018, at 85 years old. Peaceful in her sleep, which was exactly how she'd wanted to go. Her will left everything else, about $32 million after the trust was established, split between her 2 children, my dad and Aunt Patricia. Michael and I were each left $100,000 as remembrance gifts. Michael complained bitterly that it wasn't more. I thought we'd get equal shares with Dad, he told our parents. I said nothing and invested my $100,000 in index funds. What nobody knew was that Grandma had left me something far more valuable, complete control over Michael's financial future. The trust administrator role came with one other feature, a comprehensive monthly report on Michael's finances. Every expenditure, every revenue stream, every debt. I watched everything. And what I saw was disturbing. Michael's company, Thomson Tech Consulting, brought in approximately $340,000 in annual revenue. Not bad for a small consulting firm. But his expenses were $680,000 annually. The deficit? Covered entirely by the trust distributions. His mortgage, $12,000 per month equals $144,000 per year. Trust funded. His business expenses, $8,000 per month equals $96,000 per year. Trust funded. His investor distributions that he claimed as proof of profitability, $100,000 per year. Trust funded. Michael was living a complete lie, and he'd convinced himself it was truth. At family gatherings, he'd talk about his success. His client wins. His business growth. His investment returns. I'm thinking of expanding to New York, he announced at Thanksgiving 2019. Opening a second office. The business is ready for it. The business was $340,000 in debt. That's wonderful, Michael, Mom gushed. Dad clapped him on the shoulder. That's my son. Building an empire. They looked at me. Sarah, how's the insurance work? Fine, I said. Just got promoted to senior analyst. That's nice, Mom said, already turning back to Michael. Tell us more about the New York expansion. I was making $127,000 as a senior analyst. I lived in a modest apartment. Drove a 6-year-old Honda. Saved aggressively. But I wasn't building an empire, so I didn't matter. This pattern continued for years. Every family gathering became a celebration of Michael's success and a footnote acknowledgement of my existence. Christmas 2020, Michael closed a deal with a Fortune 500 company. The deal was $40,000 and barely covered his costs, but the trust made up the difference. Easter 2021, Michael and Vanessa bought a vacation home in Lake Tahoe. The down payment came from a trust distribution I'd approved, thinking he'd use it for business expansion. Thanksgiving 2022, Michael's company is valued at $5 million. The valuation was fictional, based on revenue projections that would never materialize without trust funding. I watched it all. Said nothing. Made my distributions on schedule. But I also did something else. I built my own wealth, quietly and strategically. My $127,000 salary became $156,000 after another promotion. I invested 70% of my income. Maxed out my 401k. Built a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks. I also started doing independent consulting work, actuarial analysis for startups that couldn't afford full-time analysts. That brought in another $60,000 to $80,000 annually. By 2023, my net worth hit $1.2 million. At 30 years old. Nobody in my family knew. Why would they ask? I was just Sarah, the quiet one with the boring insurance job. Meanwhile, Michael's house of cards was getting shakier. His business was bleeding money faster. His client retention was abysmal. His operating costs kept rising. The trust distributions increased to cover the gaps, $18,000 per month instead of $12,000. Emergency payments of $50,000 when he couldn't make payroll. I could have stopped it. Should have, probably. But Grandma's voice echoed in my head, he'll either learn to stand on his own, or he'll need someone to make hard choices for him. I was waiting to see which it would be. The answer came at Christmas 2024. Our family Christmas dinner is always at my parents' house in Connecticut. Formal. Expensive. The kind of event where Mom spends 3 days cooking and Dad selects wine like he's preparing for a sommelier exam. I arrived at 4 o'clock, as requested. Michael and Vanessa were already there, drinks in hand, holding court in the living room. Sarah. Vanessa air-kissed near my cheek. How lovely. Still in Denver. Still in Denver, I confirmed. How's the insurance world? Michael asked with barely concealed condescension. Still analyzing spreadsheets. Every day, I said mildly. Well, we can't all be entrepreneurs, he laughed. Some people are built for corporate structure. Dinner was the usual performance. Michael dominated conversation with stories about his business, his clients, his success. We're projecting $2 million in revenue next year, he announced over the main course. Finally breaking into the major leagues. Dad beamed. That's incredible, son. I've worked so hard for this, Michael continued. Building something from nothing. It's not easy being self-made, but it's worth it. I cut my turkey and said nothing. Sarah, Mom said, clearly feeling obligated to include me, did you have a nice year? Yes, I said. Got another promotion. Senior actuarial manager now. That's nice, dear. She turned immediately back to Michael. Tell us about the New York office plans. After dinner, we moved to the living room for dessert and coffee. Michael was on his third scotch, which always made him more expansive and less filtered. You know what I'm grateful for this Christmas, he announced. That I had the drive to succeed on my own. That I didn't need handouts or help. I built everything myself. Vanessa squeezed his hand admiringly. Not everyone has that drive, he continued, glancing at me. Some people are content being average. Working for someone else. Never taking risks. Michael, Dad chuckled, be kind to your sister. I am being kind. I'm being honest. He turned to face me directly. Sarah, you have to admit, you've never really accomplished anything on your own. You went to state school. Got a corporate job. You're fine. But you're nothing special. The room went quiet. Whereas I, he continued, warming to his theme, I went to Harvard. Started a company. Built something real. I earned everything I have. Mom nodded. You did work very hard, Michael. I think what Michael means, Vanessa added smoothly, is that different people have different definitions of success. Exactly, Michael agreed. And that's okay. Sarah found her level. There's no shame in being ordinary. Something cold settled in my chest. Actually, I said quietly, I've done quite well for myself. Michael laughed. Sure. I mean, you have a job. That's great. But it's not the same as building something, creating value, being an entrepreneur. You're right, I interrupted. It's not the same. He blinked, surprised I'd agreed. Because I actually built my wealth, I continued, my voice still quiet but cutting. I didn't need anyone's help. Neither did I, Michael said defensively. Didn't you? His face flushed. What's that supposed to mean? I could have stopped. Should have, maybe. But 6 years of watching him parade around taking credit for success built on money I was secretly distributing. 6 years of being dismissed as ordinary while he lived a lie. 6 years of being invisible while he shone with borrowed light. You're nothing without Grandma, she felt sorry for you, Michael suddenly shouted, standing up. She left you money because she pitied you. But I earned everything myself. I built my company from nothing. I didn't need her charity. Everyone fell silent. Mom gasped. Michael. No, let him finish, I said calmly. I'm just stating facts, Michael said, emboldened by the scotch and his own anger. Grandma gave you handouts because you needed them. But me? Everything I have, I worked for. Every client. Every deal. Every dollar. That's the difference between us, Sarah. I'm self-made. You're not. Dad started to intervene, but Vanessa spoke first. Michael's just saying he's proud of his accomplishments, she said. We all are. Everyone cheered, I said quietly, noting how Mom nodded, how Dad smiled proudly at Michael. Nobody defended me. Nobody questioned his narrative. They never had. I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Michael asked. I replied, noted. Then I opened my email and composed a message to James Patterson, the trust administrator who managed the technical distributions. The email was 3 sentences. Revoke all distributions to Michael Thompson. Effective tonight. Do not process the January 1st scheduled payments. I hit send. Michael's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowning. It's my bank. At 8 p.m. on Christmas. He answered. Hello? Yes, this is Michael Thompson. What? No, there must be some mistake. His face went white. What do you mean the wire transfer was cancelled? Which transfer? The January mortgage payment was scheduled to process tonight. He pulled the phone from his ear and stared at it like it had betrayed him. They're saying my investor distribution was cancelled, he said to Vanessa. The one that processes every month. $18,000. They are saying the sending account issued a stop payment. My phone buzzed. A text from James Patterson. Done. All scheduled distributions halted. Michael Thompson removed from beneficiary list. Funds frozen pending your instruction. Vanessa grabbed her phone. Let me call the business account. Michael was frantically dialing. This doesn't make sense. These investors have been funding me for 6 years. Why would they suddenly? His phone rang again. Different number. Hello? Yes. What? No, I can make payroll. I have funding coming. His voice cracked. What do you mean you want the December payment? I sent it. No, the wire was supposed to process yesterday. He looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time that evening. Sarah, he said slowly, you're a trust administrator. You work with these kinds of accounts. Do you know why a wire transfer would suddenly be cancelled? Yes, I said calmly. Why? Because the person controlling the trust decided to cancel it. The room was absolutely silent. I don't understand, Michael said. I stood up and walked to where he stood, phone still in hand. Let me explain something about trusts, I said. An irrevocable trust is one where the grantor, the person who creates it, gives up control. The money belongs to the trust, administered by a trustee who makes distribution decisions. I know what a trust is, Michael snapped. Do you know who created the trust that's been funding your lifestyle for the last 6 years? His face went blank. What are you talking about? Grandma, I said simply. She created a $3.4 million irrevocable trust in March 2018. 8 months before she died. Mom gasped. Eleanor never mentioned. She didn't mention it because she didn't want Michael to know, I continued. She wanted him to think his business was succeeding. That investors believed in him. That he'd earned his success. That's insane, Michael said. I have real investors. Real funding. No, I said. You have a trust. Had a trust. Grandma funded it with $3.4 million. Every month since 2018, that trust has paid your mortgage. Your business expenses. Your investor returns. Everything. Vanessa's phone slipped from her hand. The house, she whispered. Trust funded. Grandma bought it in 2014. The trust has been making the mortgage payments. The business operating capital. Trust distributions. $8,000 a month. The Lake Tahoe property. Down payment came from a trust distribution I approved in 2021. Michael sank into a chair. No. No. This isn't possible. I built my company. I have clients. I generate revenue. You generate $340,000 in annual revenue, I said. Your expenses are $680,000. The $340,000 deficit has been covered by trust distributions for 6 years. Dad found his voice. Sarah, if this is true. It's true. I have documentation. Bank statements. Wire transfer receipts. Everything. Why are you telling us this now? Mom demanded. Because Michael just spent 20 minutes explaining how he earned everything himself. How he's self-made. How I'm nothing without Grandma's charity. I looked at my brother. I thought he should know the truth. You're lying, Michael said desperately. This is some kind of sick joke. I pulled out my phone and forwarded him the trust documents. Read them. Your name is listed as the beneficiary. Mine is listed as the administrator. Grandma gave me complete discretion over distributions. His phone buzzed. He opened the file. The color drained from his face. You, he whispered. You've been controlling this the whole time. Yes. For 6 years. Yes. Why? He shouted. Why would you do this? Why not tell me? Because Grandma asked me not to, I said. She hoped you'd eventually build something real. That you'd become the self-made success you've been claiming to be. And you just watched? Let me think I was succeeding. I watched you take credit for success you didn't earn. I watched you dismiss my accomplishments while living on money I was distributing to you. I watched you tell our family I was nothing special while your entire life was funded by the grandmother who felt sorry for me. The silence was crushing. Vanessa stood up. How much? She asked, her voice shaking. How much of our life is fake? All of it, I said quietly. The house. The cars. The lifestyle. The business. All of it has been funded by the trust. Michael's company has never been profitable. Not once in 10 years. That's not true. Michael insisted. I have clients. I provide real value. You provide enough value to generate $340,000 annually, I said. Which, for a solo consultant, is actually respectable. But you spend like you generate millions. The difference has always been trust money. Dad stood up. Sarah, this is cruel. Why wouldn't you tell him? Why let him believe? Because every time I saw you, I interrupted, looking at my father, you told me I wasn't ambitious enough. That I should be more like Michael. That I was just ordinary. I turned to my mother. You asked me how insurance work was going while celebrating Michael's fake success. You never asked about my real accomplishments because they weren't flashy enough to matter. What accomplishments? Michael sneered, recovering some of his bravado. You work for an insurance company. My net worth is $1.4 million, I said. Earned through my $156,000 salary, my independent consulting work that brings in $80,000 annually, and strategic investing. I own my car outright. My apartment costs $2,200 a month, and I pay it from my salary, not from a trust. The room was silent. I continued, just accepted a position as Chief Actuarial Officer at a Denver-based startup. Starting salary, $280,000 plus equity. I start in February. Mom's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. But none of you asked, I said softly. Because I'm ordinary. Because I'm nothing special. Because I'm nothing without Grandma's charity. Sarah, Dad started. The trust is dissolved, I said. Effective tonight. I'm revoking all future distributions and returning the remaining funds to Grandma's estate for distribution to her designated heirs, which means you, Dad, and Aunt Patricia. How much is left? Dad whispered. Approximately $1.8 million. Grandma funded it with $3.4 million. Michael has received $1.6 million in distributions over 6 years. Michael stood up so fast his chair fell over. You can't do this. I have employees. Obligations. A mortgage payment due in 8 days. Then I suggest you figure out how to make your business actually profitable, I said. Or sell the house you can't afford. Or get a job. Whatever self-made entrepreneurs do when their funding runs out. This is vindictive. Vanessa shouted. You're punishing him for being successful. He's not successful, I said flatly. He's been living on charity while mocking the person providing it. That's not success. That's fraud. I picked up my purse. Where are you going? Mom demanded. Home. To Denver. My flight leaves at 10. You can't just drop this bomb and leave, Dad said. I can, actually. The trust is dissolved. Michael now knows the truth. You all know the truth. What you do with that information is up to you. I walked to the door. Sarah, Michael said, his voice breaking, please. Don't do this. I'll change. I'll make the business work. Just give me time. I turned back. You've had 6 years, Michael. 6 years of funding. 6 years of support. You used it to build a lifestyle, not a business. That's not my failure. It's yours. But I'm your brother. You're the person who told me I was nothing without Grandma's charity, I said. While living entirely on that charity. I'm simply removing the charity. You should be fine. After all, you earned everything yourself, right? I left them there. Michael crying. Vanessa furious. My parents stunned into silence. I drove to the airport in my 6-year-old Honda, flew back to Denver, and spent Christmas night in my modest apartment drinking wine and watching old movies. My phone exploded with calls and texts. I ignored them all. The fallout was spectacular. Michael's business collapsed within 90 days. Without trust funding, he couldn't make payroll. His employees quit. His clients left. The house in San Francisco went into foreclosure. So did the Lake Tahoe property. Vanessa filed for divorce in March. My parents tried everything to convince me to restore the trust. Guilt trips. Anger. Pleading. I refused. She's destroying her brother's life, Mom told Aunt Patricia, who promptly called me. Your mother is upset, Aunt Patricia said carefully. But between you and me, Eleanor would be proud. She always said Michael needed to learn to stand on his own. The $1.8 million remaining in the trust was distributed to Dad and Aunt Patricia as estate assets. Dad immediately tried to give half to Michael. Don't, I warned him. If you do, you're just enabling him again. Let him rebuild on his own. He gave it to Michael anyway. Michael burned through it in 18 months. It's been 2 years now. Michael lives in a small apartment in Oakland. He got a job as a consultant at someone else's firm, making $110,000 a year. It's honest work. He's apparently quite good at it when he's not trying to be a CEO. Vanessa remarried. Someone actually wealthy, from what I hear. My parents and I have a distant but civil relationship. We see each other at major holidays. They don't ask about my work anymore, which is fine. My new position as Chief Actuarial Officer turned into a major success. The startup went public last year. My equity stake is worth $3.2 million. My total net worth just passed $5 million. I'm 33 years old, genuinely self-made, and I've accomplished something Michael never did. I built real success, not a facade. Last week, I got an email from Michael. Sarah, it read. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I was arrogant, cruel, and blind. You were right about everything. I'm working on building something real now. Something I can actually be proud of. Thank you for stopping the lie, even though I hated you for it at the time. You're not ordinary. You never were. I'm sorry I couldn't see it. Michael. I stared at that email for a long time. Then I replied, noted. Maybe someday we'll rebuild our relationship. Maybe we won't. But I learned something Grandma tried to teach me all along. The people who truly earn their success don't need to announce it. They don't need validation or recognition or family dinners celebrating their achievements. They just build. Quietly. Strategically. Undeniably. And when someone dismisses them as ordinary, they smile. Because underestimation, as my grandmother knew, is the most powerful strategic advantage you'll ever have. I'm nothing without Grandma's charity? No. I'm everything because of her wisdom. And now, finally, I'm building my own legacy on my own terms. The worthless, ordinary one who was nothing special. Self-made. Successful. Free. Turns out, that's worth more than all of Michael's borrowed glory combined.